Imagine we exist in an alternate universe. After the first Super Mario game, Super Mario 2 comes out. Now Mario 2's horizontal distance on his jump is not affected by Mario's running speed beforehand. Your jump always covers the same horizontal distance, regardless of your running speed. Fans advocate for returning the original dynamic jump because it will add even more depth to Mario 2. But fanboys don't take too kindly to your suggestions. They start putting forth all manner of points. The game is still good. You just want Mario 1 and Mario 2. They're supposed to be different games. The consistent jump allows us to do things not possible in Mario 1. We have a few rare instances where you can change the jump distance, so it is unnecessary to bring back the mechanic. It makes the few instances that you have dynamic control of your jump less special. And finally, you're a Mario 1 elitist. Notice how no one made the claim that Mario 2 is bad or worse than Mario 1. The original claim is that Mario 2 would be deeper with the original jump. No one claimed they wanted Mario 1 and Mario 2, nor do they want the exact same game. They did not list all of Mario 1's unique options to return to Mario 2. For example, Mario 2 Fireball has a different bounce pattern than Mario 1, but is not something anyone is upset about. If this jump were brought back, you would still be able to use most if not all of the same strategies. You would just need to stop running, then resume running and jump at the right running speed, all done in a fraction of a second. If any jump strategies are lost by returning Mario 1's jump, they would be outweighed by all the new possibilities. The few rare instances where you can change the jump distance, such as picking a rainbow star, do not add nearly the same amount of options as bringing back the original jump. It doesn't matter if the few dynamic jump instances in Mario 2 become less special, because those jumps will still be used, and there will be new special instances in jump setups by adding the OG jump. And of course, this final point isn't a real argument. This phenomenon happens all the time, across genres and language barriers, yet no one learns from history. In 2013, DMC Devil May Cry was released. This is a reboot of the Devil May Cry series that was notorious ever since its announcement. Gameplay-wise, a major reason it was disliked was due to the removal of lock-on. Let's quickly and simply examine the target system in the series. In a room filled with enemies, who you end up shooting depends on several factors, such as the direction your right analog stick is aimed at, the direction your character is facing, where the camera is aimed at, proximity to the enemy, etc. How this exactly works changes subtly between games, but is mainly affected by the direction of your analog stick. You must hold the lock-on button in order to maintain the enemy targeted to ignore all these rapidly changing variables mid-fight. This is especially useful for heavily mobile enemies. In essence, lock-on's main job is to maintain focus of a target, rather than the initial targeting of an opponent. A major advantage of lock-on is directional inputs. You can now have back, forward, back to forward, and even sideways input to map new attacks on. This drastically increases the amount of moves you can have in your controller. Due to these reasons, players complain about this missing feature until it was added in Definitive Edition. One of the most common points from reboot fanboys was that we were afraid of change, when in reality the overall potential of the game was hindered. Some would argue that you can now do lock-on balance move like Stinger and High Time in any direction. This is something you could do in previous games via a technique called reversals. However, this depended on buffering a move from another move. Still, the overall depth of the game would be higher because there would be more possible moves to map onto your controller. People would also argue that lock-on forces you to walk, which is clunky. This, however, can be remedied by letting go of lock-on, which would make the reboot play like it is played now. It is also not an inherent property of the lock-on system. Games like Metal Gear Rising prove this. Even if lock-on were to remove the rare unique possibilities from the reboot, the overall effect would be a net positive for the game's depth. I'll cover lock-on in greater depth in a future video. And now for the real reason behind this video. To briefly summarize, DMC5 removed a few mechanics. Despite the many major and subtle removal of features in DMC5, the more hardcore community decided to focus on two of them in their advocacy, the Inertia and Reversals. This is because it would be difficult to explain all of the issues in DMC5 to the general fandom. Inertia is simply a way to add horizontal movement to your aerial movements. This exists in DMC3, DMC4, and even DMC5 to some extent. However, its best implementation is in DMC4 for a variety of reasons. For one, it applied to a larger number of moves, could be transferred between multiple moves, and could be properly redirected. On the other hand, reversal simply allows you to direct lock-on bound moves to any direction. This actually existed in the DMC5 demo, both in gaming conventions as well as the downloadable demo, but it was removed from the full game for no good reason. I made a video about this, which got a lot of traction. I deleted my old channel so you cannot see how much it spread, but it was about like 90k views, okay? And got a fair amount of support. but there was a vocal section of the community that attacked us on this issue. I may make a proper video on this in the future, however for now I'll focus on the more recent incident on the matter. On the 6th anniversary of DMC5's release, I tweeted out a reminder of how the DMC community has treated us. I also noted how players claimed that we would find something to properly replace these mechanics, yet 6 years later no such replacements were found. When DMC5 released, I challenged this claim by stating that compared to DMC4's release, we now have a far more educated and skillful player base, a wealth of trainer options, easy access to game recordings, input displays, and other resources. If we were to find replacements for these mechanics, they would be far more limited and needlessly difficult. Typically, you input the move you want to reverse during the buffering stage of another move, then release lock-on and move the analog stick to the desired direction. However, one of the replacements for reversals found in DMC5 requires you to add a weapon switch to this process, which not only makes certain reversals much more difficult, but is also limited to a very few moves in DMC5. To reverse Stinger multiple times with a 4-weapon loadout, you have to triple weapon switch constantly compared to no weapon switching in DMC3 or 4. Anyways, this resulted in a polite conversation with a fellow DMC5 player. He stated his concern about how reintegrating reversals would make the current limited ways to reverse moves in DMC5 less special. He cites a fan called PlayerBD, who made a video theorizing about combo making. Essentially, the more a combo's highlight or finisher is dependent on earlier actions, the more complex and unique it is. This is not a new concept. Many players hold this view and is something I covered in my DMC style video, which you should watch. My response is simple. Overall, the depth and special moments will still increase with reversals. These more limited reversals will still be appreciated, which is something we see with Devil May Cry 4 Nero combos. In speedrunning, adding options that are too good typically means that the rest of your arsenal will be ignored, as it is not efficient. However, style play is much more different, and eventually every aspect of the game gets explored and shown off. For example, despite Virgil having all sorts of cool teleports and movement options, we will still occasionally see a jump in combos for functionality, aesthetics, and a variety of sakes. Let's back up a bit. We mentioned reversals via buffered inputs and releasing lock-on. However, there is another form of reversals that I'll call pseudo-reversals. In short, if you find a way to cross under or over an enemy, whether it is from your movement, the enemy's movement, or both, this creates the illusion that you reverse an attack. In reality, the attack is aiming towards the enemy at the very start, but due to movement factors, it ends up facing a different direction for the rest of the animation. This is not unique to DMC5. It has its place in other games, especially with DMC4 Nero. Neuromancer then replies that he hasn't seen many modern reversal players use these fake reversals, as evidence that they lost their value. My response was that the combo scene in DMC5 is nowhere near as strong as it was during the peak eras of previous titles. Most of the modded players freestyle, meaning they wipe a room from start to finish, often heavily improvised, and rely more on fundamentals than niche applications like these fake reversals. Combo players typically focus on niche and choreographed combos, and most good combo players for DMC5 play without reversal mods or mods in general. Neuromancer then politely disagrees with me. He expresses that which scene is stronger than the other is subjective. I reply, claiming that there is definitely an element of subjectivity, but that mostly applies when comparing players that are close in skill level and creativity. In terms of overall differences in communities, the difference is huge, and I point out how often solo, long-form, revolutionary gameplay videos have been made throughout the past DMC's history. Nowadays, we typically see collaboration videos where many players come together and output the same quality and quantity of gameplay that a singular player would do in the past. Before we go on, notice something crucial. Neuromancer was respectful, inquisitive, and wasn't condescending or arrogant. This will be a sharp contrast to the other players mentioned in this video. Meet Spino. He is mainly a DMC5 Dante player that is really good at combos, and has recently participated in a collaboration video that has some of the best DMC5 combos ever. His initial replies are analogies that attempt to make my initial tweets seem illogical. He uses analogies that require a fair amount of uncommon technical knowledge. As such, I ask him what he's talking about. This will be relevant later, but for now note that he's being passive-aggressive while also failing to give a simple analogy. And before someone says that I was passive-aggressive in my initial tweets, this is in the context of months of fanboys insulting us for wanting mechanics back. I reserve the right to be mean to that crowd, and, to my knowledge, Spino was not part of that crowd as his debut happened a long time after DMC5's release. I ask him if he has found a replacement for Inertia and Reversals. If there is any way you can debunk the core of my arguments, this is the most straightforward way to do so. Instead, he dodges the questions and deviates the argument. He calls my judgment meaningless until the prequels resemble the DMC5 clips he links to me. Not only is this a vague requirement, given how the clips show random gameplay with a whole host of mechanics that are irrelevant to the subject matter at hand, but nowhere did I claim the previous games can do everything DMC5 can. I point out his failure to address my argument, but he denies this in a condescending manner and says that my claim holds no weight because of my DMC5 gameplay, implying I'm a mediocre player. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fallacy, or a common invalid argument. This is a form of appeal to authority, a fallacy in which someone's argument is credited or discredited based on their authority in the subject. In short, I do not need to be as good as a cook in order to judge a 5-star restaurant's cooking after they gave me raw steak when I ordered medium rare. While being a cook increases your odds of having a well-substantiated opinion or argument, it alone does not inherently make you right. This is something I have been against for much of my time in the community. If anyone benefits from this fallacy, it would be me. I played all these games at a high level, whereas somebody like Spino only specializes with DMC5 Dante. But of course I don't use this as evidence for my claims, because that would be stupid. He links to me another video in which I already watched and shared before, irrelevant to the argument at hand. Fellow player TurtleSensei replies to him with a neutral tone. Spino talks about no animation JC, a name which does not make any sense as I never asked for a JC without an animation. I assume he means a jump cancel which transfers inertia. We'll come back to this. He claims that I want DMC4 Dante back with 5's weapons and actions. I have never stated nor believed this. Reversals and inertia are system-wide mechanics that are not limited to any one character. Think about it as a layer in a photo or video editing project, where the layer adjusts the color temperature for the entire image, whereas each attack and move are individual brushstrokes. This is a misrepresentation of my stance and is also irrelevant to the argument at hand. Even if I did believe this, that does not negate my original claim that the game would be deeper with inertia and reversals back. Meanwhile, another player, his name Lin, can communicate in Chinese and talk to him as well. Here, Spino admits he did not expect many to understand his initial analogy, something I assumed from the start. Lin's conversation will be relevant for later. Soon after, I quote tweet Spino, explaining why I don't share many DMC players' stuff anymore, briefly summarizing the entire argument and how condescending he was. Eventually, Spino rants about how both Dante's in DMC4 and DMC5 are different, regurgitating the same straw man as before about me wanting DMC4 Dante and DMC5. He claims that without a college degree to understand his initial computer analogy, I can't understand society or play JB games. Side note, it is sad to know how much you are getting scammed if you are still making fallacious arguments after college. He continues talking about no animation JC, aka inertia, saying that with inertia, his linked DMC5 clips would be impossible. Around this time, I make the Mario analogy that I made at the start of this video, in the form of a Twitter thread. Simultaneously, we argue more in depth about inertia. Since he deleted his tweets, I unfortunately cannot show you the exact arguments he made, so you'll just have to trust my memory. He regurgitated the claim that I want DMC4 Dante in DMC5, which is false. As I said before, inertia and reversals are system-wide mechanics that apply for all characters, so this focus on DMC4 Dante just doesn't make sense. I explained that you can choose whether or not a move has inertia. Essentially, you cannot give a move inertia if it is done too late after a jump cancel. On top of this, you get no inertia if you jump cancel a move too early or too late, depending on the move. He showed me a small DMC5 combo string that he encouraged me to replicate in DMC4, with the intent to show that it will be impossible to do with inertia. I do this, but remind him that I don't need to replicate anything as merely understanding the mechanics is enough. This is to avoid wasting a crazy amount of time playing Simon Says with him. Also notice how I presented counter-arguments to his claim, but he still had not showed me evidence of mechanics that properly replace inertia and reversals. He dismissed my clip because it isn't exactly like his DMC5 clip. I explain why I cannot be an exact copy, as DMC5 has many other differences that affect the outcome, such as the nuances of each attack, the different gravity, the differences in jump movement, etc. In other words, we should be isolating the variable of inertia. I could go on about how he obviously lacked knowledge of inertia despite being so vehemently against it, but for now we will ignore all the other issues with his arguments here, as it will require a proper tutorial to explain. Word of this argument spreads. A DMC5 player called Unink decides to subtweet me, using the same strawman as Spino did. You only want to play DMC4 with DMC5 weapons, blah blah blah. Then he tells me to not teach them about DMC5. I tell them I can say whatever I want, that whether he likes it or not, I indirectly taught DMC5 players as I found many different techniques and setups in the early days of DMC5. Techniques which are not common among DMC5 players. For example, I found and explained the strict down jump cancel within the first month of DMC5's release. I tell him he can call me a senior sensei as an insult to injury. Spino then goes on a rant about how I sent Lin to talk to him, which I didn't, along with some insults I'm too lazy to regurgitate. Unink goes on a rant that again does not address my core arguments nor addresses me directly. Who would have guessed? Lin tries to reason with him, but Unink claims that inertia would be worse in DMC5 because modern inertia is not as smooth as it is in DMC4. The problem with this argument is that it assumes developers couldn't control the nuances of inertia more easily and on a granular level compared to modders, who do not have experience with game development nor the source code to DMC5. The inertia mods are pretty close to how it works in DMC4, but of course it isn't similar enough because these are ordinary people doing the best with the little they have to mod the game. This isn't their job, of course it won't be proper. Funnily enough, reversal mods are the exception, working basically the exact same they did in the DMC5 demo. Lin also talks to Spino again. Spino claims adding something will add depth is not always true. which, while I agree, is so obviously and hilariously not the case for Inertia and Reversals. There is a language barrier that keeps being brought up as a reason for this disagreement. However, I believe that this is irrelevant given how Lin has spoken to him in Chinese, yet they are still making the same nonsensical points. Leaving these players behind, now we turn our attention to a small Discord server comprised of a lot of newer DMC players too cowardly to confront me directly. Not Ender misrepresents me by claiming I won't look at DMC5's unique aspects. Nowhere in my argument with Spino or others is this even implied. I have praised many aspects of DMC5, from Devil Sword Dante to quad S cancels to the overall more practical variety in enemy displacement. I praised GPO1 and Virgil's doppelganger many times before. I refuse to believe this is an accidental misrepresentation, as we'll see many of these lies later on. He later shares his tweet in which he claims DMC style player hate is stupid, and makes the point that each game is meant to be unique. He clearly directed this at me and those who agree with me. I actually saw this tweet earlier, but gave him the benefit of the doubt because it seemed completely irrelevant to anything we said. Yet another case of me ignoring my usually accurate gut feelings. Who would have thought? It is extremely disingenuous to label the discussion as DMC style player hate, as I was not hating on anyone until I was insulted first. It is also disingenuous to imply that we believe every iteration of a character should be the same. Nowhere have I stated this, and I will pay money for somebody to actually find a tweet of me saying this. Also, imagine calling me a DMC4 elitist when I have not only pushed the meta of DMC3 further than in DMC4, consider DMC3 my overall favorite game, and often criticize DMC4 for removing certain things DMC3 had. It's a little weird. Not Ender knows of me and knows the wide selection of characters across multiple DMCs I play, adding to my belief that he is straight up lying. Not Ender talks about how he could rant all day about me, but won't, then proceeds to rant about me. Also, spoiler alert, having strong beliefs doesn't mean someone has main character syndrome. Navolok talks smack about DMC4 elitists, again, they're labeled me DMC4 elitist, then admits he doesn't even know what I said. He implies that guard flying is a frame-perfect input, which is completely false. In fact, doing a frame-perfect JC with Skystar generates no inertia. This is why these star rays are possible. He claims I am delusional despite never actually tackling the core of my points, which is something that no one in this Discord did, by the way. Anyways, I get called an incel by Yuma because I flippantly apply the term to myself. I'm not. Stardust claims I'm overconfident, such as that one time I said DMC5 Virgil players aren't as ambitious as they could be, claiming that I did not know about gameplay from players like Edwin Zhu. This is incorrect. I've known about Edwin Zhu before DMC5 released, and I followed him since. At best, I forgot to watch one of his comic book videos when it was released. Also, I'm one of the longest standing players in the community and have spent much of my time learning from all the generations of DMC players. My DMC Hall of Fame series is an example of this, and I am far from finished with that series. The only active players who have been in the community for longer than me are Chaser Tech and Tatsumaru Black. I've been around the community and creating content for 15 years. TurtleSensei and Dino are the only players whose knowledge on the history of DMC's meta rivals mine. I think I can justifiably be confident as someone who spent more than 3 times thinking, talking, playing these games at a higher level than all of you in this Discord. That's not overconfidence. If anything, I should be more confident. Not Ender claims DMC5 would not benefit from inertia because DMC5 is all macro movement, whereas inertia is micro movement. A hilariously wrong claim which is easily debunked by looking at intended things like air-controlled rainstorm in DMC5, and the ways you can apply inertia after an aerial Mustang. Micro movement is still important, albeit less so, to cross under and over enemies, and of course, it's still useful to position yourself closer or further from enemies too. Despite the jump cancel hitboxes being much larger than in DMC4, being closer to an enemy still makes certain strings much easier, if not possible, when there otherwise would not. Again, I believe this is pure dishonesty, as not only has Not Ender have been on record for extolling the values of inertia, but has played all DMC games a decent amount to know better. Here's his tweet from a mere year ago. The Volek falsely claims that he can play at a high level. Not Ender claims we forget DMC4 is a bad game, which is false. Anyone who watches my stream will hear me complain about DMC4. I have stated multiple times that DMC4 is an incomplete game, and all their issues. Again, this is a flat-out lie. Believe it or not, it is common for players with hundreds of hours on a game to constantly complain about their game and be more aware of its flaws than the average fan. Watch any speedrunner or pro player of any game live stream for long enough and they will rant about it. In DMC5, Dante has Air Mustang, which emulates inertia to some degree. However, it is still limited, not just in its application, but to Dante only. Air Mustang does not allow you to easily direct inertia wherever you want, nor does it allow you to transfer inertia from one move to the other. Certain inertia redirects like billet magnetism in DMC4 are also unavailable with Air Mustang. You can't get a proper guard fly out of Air Mustang. At best, you can call it a guard float, maybe? Again, they refuse to find a proper replacement for inertia that is at the same level or superior of that in DMC4. He talks about how newer installments are meant to innovate and create new systems, but this is congruent with wanting these mechanics back. You can have new systems and add upon current systems while using the old systems. You can even modify these systems in a way that still yields similar but different benefits. You can have sprinkles on your ice cream while still innovating by adding a cherry on top. Not Ender implies his clips are above us and worth gatekeeping. So much for ego, I guess. He later implies that I and others who agree with me only have DMC in our lives. While DMC is my main game, I play other games and have other interests that I don't post about as often simply because I have nothing worth showing off for them. This is even more of a lie when you look at players like Martin G, who have not played DMC heavily in years and constantly changes his games and interests. He implies I have an ego, which is true now given how common it is to come across people like Ender that have to resort to insults and strawmans of me. You know me, the person who makes DMC appreciation videos of players and used to constantly share people's gameplays, even Spino's video, so that the community grows more and is more educated about these games. Incredible ego, I must say. Who wouldn't develop an ego when such an uneducated, at best dishonest, at worst crowd like you exists? One that constantly criticizes in their echo chamber instead of actually discussing things with those you disagree with. He complains about how complaining doesn't achieve anything. This is again irrelevant, but for me it's simple. I got to vent while also pointing out the obvious pattern of fanboy behavior in gaming. They had 6 years to show off DMC5 having proper replacements for these mechanics, yet couldn't even do that. This is a common talking point, a belief that you must have pragmatic ideas otherwise you are dumb for even thinking about them. The reality is that such seemingly useless ideas often end up being relevant in the future. Just like how the concept of imaginary numbers ended up having real-world applications. Or how philosophizing about the self became more relevant when we learn about how damaging certain parts of the brain affect our personality. Given how often this happens in other games, hobbies, and society as a whole, it is worth noticing these patterns in order to not repeat them. The pursuit of an idea and its legitimacy, even if lacking in application, is not wrong nor dumb if logical. He talks about how you can cancel out of Virgil's dive kick in DMC5 as if that wasn't already true for DMC4 and Reboot. He proceeds to talk about closed-mindedness, despite me acknowledging DMC5's positives, and my echo chamber. Imagine talking about echo chambers when you get to lie on a Discord safe space group about someone, me, refusing to actually engage directly with us because you're too scared to get your ideas challenged. You literally cannot make this shit up. I had huge arguments with friends because I disagree with the claims that DMC5 is a bad game, even when I was in a minority in that friend group. Nowadays I'm much more agreeable, yet I'm still called closed-minded for some reason. He calls Martin G's counter-argument to Ender's tweet delusional. Instead of actually engaging with his tweet, he runs to his little echo chamber and pushes the idea that players think wall running is janky, and therefore invalidates the argument that DMC4 would be better if wall running returned. If anything, one of the common complaints I hear about DMC4 is its removal of wall running. Either Ender has been living under a rock, or he's lying again. He again makes the straw man that we're looking for DMC4 and DMC5, which is like me saying wanting DT enemy combos in DMC4 means I want it to be like DMC3. Or like saying me wanting lock-on in Reboot is like me wanting it to be like DMC4. You can still have these games play differently and encourage different playstyles while retaining the same overarching mechanics by adding newer mechanics, weapons, characters, enemies, environmental interactions, etc. Also, notice how every time they praise Spino, it's never for any of his arguments, just his insults. The doodles say we think too much of ourselves for finding techniques in DMC5, completely ignoring the context of Spino belittling my knowledge of the game and Unang telling me I shouldn't talk about DMC5 to them. I was snide because they disrespected me first. If I did the same to them, they'd be accusing me of victim blaming. Our combo talks as if his judgment of us is in any way accurate. Something about needing a job by Stardust. Yes. Freaking argument bingo, no job, get a job. Bella admits she's fine with these attacks because she personally dislikes me. She calls me a bigoted incel for checks no. Not being in favor of the progress flag hung outside the White House. Without getting too political, the progress flag represents an amalgamation of political ideologies. It is not as simple as the pride flag that represents support for gay rights. It is far more complex than that and carries a huge context behind it that goes beyond advocacy for marginalized people. You can disagree with my interpretation of the flag, but claiming I am bigoted for this is a reach. He fails to showcase any examples in which I hate a group of people for their immutable characteristics like race, sex, gender identity, etc. Given how I have zero issues hating on people publicly for so many years now, you'd expect to find this evidence pretty easily. That's because I don't. But of course, everything is bigotry in these people's eyes. Again, Ender claims we are too egotistical and believes we deserve huge respect for our contributions to the community, purposefully ignoring the context in which we were attacked first. Stylish Rumination, a player who I praised and whose work I shared several times, continues with the ego accusation. He regurgitates the same talking point about being practical when expressing your ideas. If I prioritize being persuasive, my entire personality and way I talk would be different. There's a reason why I don't do this, and it is to be as honest and accurate about certain issues and ideas as possible. It is not my fault that people are stupid enough to deny the validity of a claim based on your tone alone. I could be a combination of Hitler, Stalin, Genghis Khan, and Darth Vader, throwing the worst insults known to man. That still would not make any of my claims that staying hydrated and eating your fruits and vegetables is good for your health. That says more about those dismissing that claim than it does about me. Again, and they're complaining about me being rude, despite Spino and Unink being rude to me first. He even goes as far to suggest that I'm being racist for using Inertia-sensei, when it is merely a reference to TurtleSensei's name, as well as telling them to call me teacher. At no point did I confuse what language they're using. Like, bro, I've been in this community for a long time. I have to actually research based on what people are saying in different countries, and China and Japan are like the biggest player bases for this community. You don't think I know how to distinguish Chinese from Japanese writing? Are you fucking serious? This is the craziest stretch anyone has made about me. You should be ashamed of yourself. He claims that I see myself as important for finding new techniques and setups, but that players would eventually find these things on their own. New players would certainly find these things on their own, but again, the entire reason I made those statements was in response to Unink. He basically told us that we can have an opinion because we aren't the best of the best for DMC5. Not only is this debatable, but every new generation of top players are there because of the foundation laid by previous players. The top chess players of the early 1900s are nowhere near as good as modern chess players because modern chess players learn from them, directly or indirectly, as well as learning from AI. Ender again tries to pull a both sidism. Imagine getting invaded by another country, so you fight back. But instead, other countries blame you for the bloodshed of your soldiers. If you know, you know. The way Ender is talking about this argument is not much different. Stardust claims I am a homophobe now, and a racist. It's crazy that this was interpreted as a racist insult, especially given how I love offensive humor and have made tons of jokes that are actually offensive. Yet this is the best you fucking got of me being a bigot. Seriously, dude? Chat, remember that when people start strawmanning you and falsely accusing you of every kind of bigotry, but won't actually address your points, you basically won. Anyways, these chat logs got leaked and prompted the Rat May Cry Discord to scatter. The irony. Martin G argued against these character attacks by Ender, yet none of these players dared to defend their friend publicly. None of these players said anything before I deleted my old account with multiple times more followers either. If that's not cowardice, I don't know what is. The Volk himself claims that this is supposed to be a safe space, aka echo chamber. This is why I have been calling this Discord a safe space. It is a safe space for people to libel and spread rumors about somebody without any real pushback. I intended to censor each person's name here, but why should I, when they have made such disingenuous attacks on my character? I don't even know about these people outside of their videos, if they rarely if ever talk to me directly. They never engage in any of the things I said that they took issue with. Yet I'm supposed to believe that these people are honest actors in this community worth respecting. Nah, go fuck yourselves. None of you actually represented my main point properly, nor did you at all accurately describe the timeline of the entire discussion, but instead made all manner of personal attacks and lies about me. This shows that even experts in their field can make basic mistakes in reasoning, and how sometimes experts that know better will still side with the wrong arguments out of spite for certain individuals. All of this because I dare to claim that DMC5 could be deeper if it kept certain mechanics. I apologize for the poor organization. I could have dissected each comment more, but I realized that this video would be too long for that. Ultimately, I have made my point. Use this as a case study for the future, as other gaming communities, hobbies, and even larger social and political discussions degrade to these types of idiots. Once you see this pattern, you'll never unsee it, and you will realize how conversations quickly get derailed and co-opted by the worst kinds of people. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and enjoy your day, and remember, be honest.